Hello, everybody. Today I'm going to talk to you about schizophrenia, like you heard me talk about multiple times this semester. So let's get started. So, just a quick introduction, which I'm sure a lot of you know, schizophrenia is an extremely complex mental disorder. A lot of people don't understand how complex schizophrenia is. It's one of the most debilitating mental illnesses, and only 1% of the population in the entire world has schizophrenia. So it's really hard for people to understand what it is unless you have it or know someone who's personally gone through it. And it's one of the most debilitating of mental illnesses because it is diagnosed at one of the primary points of a human's life. It's between the ages of 20 and 25 when it is typically diagnosed. It can go anywhere up to 45, and there's children as young as 4 who have had schizophrenia. But it is when many individuals start to live life on their own, and when a mental illness comes in and completely hinders any of this progress they have made on themselves, they usually need a lot of additional help. And when you're diagnosed with something like that late in life, it's hard for people to ask for help. And schizophrenia has honestly defied any scientific explanation because there's no single factor that can characterize all individuals that has schizophrenia. There are 4 subtypes of schizophrenia. It includes paranoid schizophrenia, disorganized schizophrenia, catatonic, and undifferentiated schizophrenia, with paranoid being one of the most common. So, when we talk about causes of schizophrenia, it's really hard because there is no specific cause. No one single individual has the same symptoms as another individual. Researchers have also not found a defect in just one specific area of the brain, so it's really hard to find the right and correct forms of treatment for people with schizophrenia because there's not that one singular brain region that has a defect in it. So each individual with schizophrenia usually has different brain areas that seem like the center cause of it all. Researchers have found that it is most likely caused by disruption of neuronal connectivity between multiple areas of the brain, and that's usually the temporal and frontal lobes, as well as having enlarged ventricles. And not everyone is going to have that same thing going on inside of them. So, if we talk about diagnosis a little bit, diagnosis primarily comes from the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistic Manual of Mental Disorders. So, like I said before, schizophrenia is typically diagnosed in persons between the ages of 20 and 25, and that goes for both males and females. And this is what really can cause a huge negative impact on someone's personal and professional life as well as their opportunities. So, the DSM standards of how schizophrenia is diagnosed is when an individual is showing signs and symptoms for at least up to 6 months. Sometimes it's only for 1 month. At least 2 or more of these symptoms need to be present, and a significant mood disorder must not be present with schizophrenia, so they always have to rule out things like bipolar disorder and personality disorders. Schizophrenia also cannot simply be diagnosed by only using neuroimaging techniques because, like I had stated before, there's too many areas of the brain that are affected by this. There's not that singular area of the brain, and not everyone with schizophrenia has the same neuroimaging images that come up when they're exposed to MRIs or DTIs or fMRIs. But those imaging techniques have got us one step closer in order to identifying the root cause of schizophrenia. They have shown a great reduction in gray matter compared to their controls, as well as those with schizophrenia having the enlarged ventricles. Researchers have also found that through fMRI and PET scans, there's a reduction of activity within the frontal and temporal regions of the brain. So, although helpful, the symptoms need to be present as well, especially when we are considering that not every schizophrenic individual will have the same fMRI results or symptoms. The photo is where we're looking at a study where they chose 3 different intention tests for healthy controls as well as schizophrenic patients, and I'm going to go more into this image later. So, there's 2 types of symptoms that we go through. First, we have our negative symptoms. That's their flat affect. You're having no emotion within your voice, the marked avolition, loss of motivation with life, lack of social interest, and reduced social drive. You typically aren't going to want to be around people. The positive symptoms, those are the ones that you primarily hear about with delusions, prominent hallucinations, disorganized speech, catatonic behavior, and bizarre behavior. So, when we talk about having the 2+ symptoms for more than 6 months, that can all be um, ex-nayed basically if someone has very bizarre delusions or hallucinations. That's when you only need that one symptom to diagnose them with schizophrenia because there's not really any other mental illness that really has those kinds of symptoms. So, doctors and psychiatrists now go by the signs and symptoms of schizophrenia alongside fMRI studies to help diagnose individuals, since we do see similar fMRI images, although they're not always going to be the same. So, the DSM 5 states that there must be at least delusions, hallucinations, or disorganized speech present, only one of the three. There is a negative symptom present, usually that's going to be your flat affect, and doctors must see a decrease in level of functioning in more than one major area of their lives, and this includes their work life, their interpersonal relationships, their self-care routine, and doctors must also rule out the depressive and bipolar disorder and any other like personality disorder that would have kind of psychotic symptoms. So our associated regions. This, I see a decrease in the frontal and temporal lobe activity. It's one of the bigger things, and this is where a few of the symptoms could originate by using previous knowledge from various classes. Um, what each attribute to these brain areas, a decrease in frontal lobe activity would lead to the flat affect, as well as the reduced social motivation and lack of social cues because the front cortex, controls emotions and judgment. So if you're going to have that reduced activity or there's going to be some neuronal connectivity dysregulation, that's when you're going to get that flat affect. That's when you're going to get a little bit more of an emotionless person. And within a reduction in activity in the temporal lobe, this is where we tend to find hallucinations, or where we think hallucinations most likely originate within the brain. Primarily the auditory ones, because you have your Wernicke's area back there, and that's usually where delusions are most likely found to be forming. So this is the picture I talked about earlier where they gave 3 intention tasks between healthy controls and schizophrenic patients. And as you can see, can I get the pointer? Oh, we got this. We got a little marker. So the healthy control in the temporal lobe, huge. And the greater, very much a decrease in activity, especially when we look at this area too, not near as much activity in these patients compared to these. So for treatments, there really is no one treatment for schizophrenia, as well as there really is no cure for schizophrenia because it is so complex and diverse. There's going to be multiple patients with multiple symptoms, different brain regions being affected. So there's not a singular medication, therapy, or surgery that could treat each and every person. The most common is antipsychotic medications. It's what really helps mitigate symptoms of schizophrenia, primarily hallucinations and delusions. And those primary medications are clozapine and thorazine. Both primarily treat and help suppress those positive symptoms in individuals. And treating and maintaining schizophrenia is really the best when you have antipsychotic medications mixed with cognitive behavioral therapy. So CBTs usually help to directly help patients confront their symptoms, and their symptoms are identified and then understood, and that helps them come a little more face to face with what they're facing in their lives. That is it. Thank you.